Welcome to Unpublished, a work in progress audio podcast by Denise Renee. Here I share past unpublished creative works, current writing projects, still in process, and whatever whimsical musings or deep thoughts I have about the creative process. If this is your vibe, then keep listening as I get into today's content. Welcome to episode number 5 of Unpublished. And y'all, if you've been paying attention, your girl's been a little bit absent. I've been a little bit absent from social media and from my regular I was on a good clip, y'all. Oh man, I was on a good clip, getting really consistent with my content, and then I started a new contract position a few weeks ago, taking my working hours up to 70 hours a week. And whenever you're onboarding and just learning something new, oh my God, at least for me, it takes all of my focus. It takes all of my time. And I've been really askew over the last couple of weeks, but I'm settling in. If you hear the question mark in my voice, but I'm stammering, but I'm settling in. And so I've had to just readjust and be like, oh God, I hate when I'm like, yes, I'm going to be out here. I'm going to be consistent. And then I'm not. I hate that because something always comes up. Life always happens. So, but nonetheless, I had to reconfigure what I want to do, how I want to do it. So we're reconfiguring. You got the last episode because that was pre-recorded. So I was like, okay, great. So boom, bet that's going out. But then I didn't do anything last week. And I was like, ugh. So this week, I'm like, I'm going to get something out this week. I'm cheating. Okay. I'm cheating. If you're on my YouTube channel yesterday, my first, my first podcast of the first episode of my new podcast, Lord, what's it called? The Sell Your Book podcast. I had to look it up, child. The first episode of my Sell Your Book podcast went up. I'm really proud of that. Please go check that out. If you're, watching this within a week of me dropping this. So the only reason that came out is because I recorded about 5 episodes before I started my new position here. So I'm definitely going to be consistent over the next month. My intention was to keep on recording interviews. However, I got a little sidetracked with my new contract position. But I know someone who is ready to do their episodes. I'm going to try to get them recorded in the next week or two. And then, I'm kind of out of my immediate circle. So now I have to start reaching out to people and all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to do my best to keep that podcast coming as consistently as possible. My posting schedule for that is every Saturday. And now my new posting schedule for Unpublished is going to be every Sunday, darling. So I'm like, these are kind of low effort pieces of content that I can put out. And we're going to do it. So today, right now, is Friday, June 14th that I'm recording this. And I'm going to publish this on Sunday. Because I'm cheating, like I said. So let's get back around to the beginning of the conversation here. So I'm cheating today. And what I'm recording here, this is so lo-fi. I'm recording in my living room. It's echoey in here. It's not my good mic. I'm recording this on my iPhone and my notes. And I don't care because I just want to get it out. Okay. Look, stick with me and you're going to get higher production value from me on this podcast. I'm even going to come on camera, but I ain't ready for that right now. So anyhow, this is unpublished, right? It's unpublished. This is imperfect and leave me alone. But I'm going to get to the point. Okay, so how am I cheating? Well, what I'm doing today is I was looking at some other pieces that I can share with y'all. And I dug up some other pieces from my archives. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be really good. And then I was like, you know what? I would really like to set up the context a little bit for when I wrote these pieces. And then I'm going to, later on, I plan on sharing things that I'm working on now and talking more about like my writing process. And those are some of the things I want to come on camera for. And I also want to show like how I work, how I write, and, do screen shares and things like that. So that's coming. It's coming out. But for right now, I'm just, sharing like some older pieces and whatnot. So I wanted to provide a context for that. And I'm like, oh, you guys who are maybe listening to this podcast on YouTube, eventually I'll put it on the other platforms. But and so you'll listen to this as an archive. But you're watching this on YouTube or listening to this on YouTube, and you may or may not be on my email list, and you may or may not be paying attention to my blog. Over the last month, 2 months or so, I have been writing mini novels, not really, but kind of, on my blog, and really, not just like teaching, like, cause like I have my video series where, I'm teaching things about writing and writing book and that kind of thing, but I'm couching that in personal stories. So I've been kind of like going in on certain different pieces of who I am. So if you've never checked out my blog, I invite you to do so at writingwithdeniserenee.com/blog. Again, there I'm figuring out what my cadence will be for my blogs, because my blog posts are epic and I really put a lot into them. So I'm like, well, maybe right now in this season, I may not be able to do them once a week. Maybe I can only do 2 a month. I don't know. We'll see. But I have so much other content going on that I really have to rethink. I'm like, okay, I want to do all the things. I may not be able to do all the things at the level I want to do them at just yet, but at least if I'm doing them at some level, I'll take it. And that's just where I am right now. So I'm cheating because I want to share with you 2 blog posts my 2 most recent blog posts, so that they will give you a context for the stories that I'm going to share next. So what I've started doing for my last couple of blog posts is because, I do write a lot. I got a lot to say. And I know that everybody is not a reader. Everyone's not going to read down from top to bottom, right? They see it and they're like, oh my God, I don't want to read this. The readers will read, okay? But for the rest of y'all, I do a blog read. So I read the blog to you. So I'm like, okay, at least you can enjoy, you can get the information I'm trying to share, and you can be doing something else. You don't have to, because for me too, reading is like, it's a focused activity, and God knows we don't know how to focus anymore. In our society, we always have to do 2 things at once, at least. So I read it out to you. So what I'm going to do is, instead of sending you over to my blog, I'm going to incorporate, I have to go download them, but I'm going to incorporate the blog reads from my last 2 blog episodes, because I talked about some of my experiences in college. Of course, I set up, whatever the teaching video is for that blog post. And so you're welcome to physically go to the blog post, and I'll give you the link, the URLs for them if you want to see the video that's associated with it. And if you want to get the resources, like you're interested in what it is I'm talking about, that's cool. Go ahead, dig into the Denise Renee universe. But I'm really sharing these audios with you to give you a context for my time in college, my time working on my English degree, and my music degree concurrently. It was intense. So I'm going to give you that context. That's what this episode is going to be. So we're going to be listening to those 2 blog reads. And then the next episode, I will start sharing some of the stories from that time period. Okay. So that was the long-winded 8.5 minute explanation of what you're about to listen to. And I'm not editing this. I don't care. I do care, but I don't care about perfection. That's the full statement. All right. So this first blog read, and I'm not really going to introduce them because I've just done so. You'll hear. So the first read is How I Tapped into My Inner Storyteller, and You Can Too. That's the title of the post. How I Tapped into My Inner Storyteller, and You Can Too. You can find this blog post at writingwithdeniserenee.com inner dash storyteller. Okay, writingwithdeniseprenay.com/inner dash storyteller. And you'll see where I have the audio embedded, and you'll also scroll down the page and you'll see pictures. I have some pictures in there from me in college, and and whatever links that and resources and things like that. So here is my blog read for how I tapped into my inner storyteller, and you can too. Tell me a story. Huh? I replied. Tell me a story, he asked in a quieter, gentler tone. I froze. My eyes widened like a proverbial deer in headlights. My mind scrambled, panicked from dozens of questions that attacked all at once. What kind of story? For kids? For adults? One that I wrote? But I can't remember them like that. That's why they're on paper. What if he doesn't like it? Is he still going to like me? Then, as if my Macintosh PowerBook 145B accidentally rebooted before I could save my work, my mind went as blank as a fresh document with a blinking cursor. His voice snapped me back into the moment. You're a writer, right? Yeah. My voice was sheepish. So you should be able to tell me a story. So, tell me a story. Mischief danced in his voice. We were just having a great moment. Why was he playing with me? Didn't he know writing stories on paper and telling them out loud are two different disciplines? I had learned that the hard way in Charles Nero's rhetoric class the previous year. Weren't we both two black kids smart enough to get into this elite New England college? He spooned his bare chest deeper into my naked back and snuggled his chin onto my shoulder. Tell me a story. His barely audible whisper tickled my ear. Warmth shot through my body. Melted, I was powerless against that command. I instantly complied. I can't remember what tumbled out of my mouth, but it was enough. When I finished a few minutes later, he leaned back, crooked his elbow to rest his chin into his knuckles, and looked at me with a satisfied grin. Now that wasn't so hard, was it? I yanked the pillow from under him so fast he didn't see that whack coming. He laughed and pulled me closer and held me long enough till I couldn't help but start giggling too. But telling that story really was hard for me because I identified as a writer, not a storyteller. Oral tradition versus written discipline. It was the early part of 1995, just months before I was set to graduate college. I was 21 years old and had spent the prior 12 years of my life cultivating my passion for reading and creative writing. I was knee-deep in the struggle to finish up my honors English thesis project so I could prepare for my defense. My English thesis was a literary analysis of Paul Marshall's work as a Caribbean American writer. To reflect my degree's concentration in creative writing, I was also set to write a suite of stories as my entry point into the canon. Simultaneously, my other major was music with a concentration in composition. Are you sensing a theme? For that thesis project, I was composing a suite of original jazz music and making all the preparations for the required performance concert. Let me tell you something. Bates College did not believe in letting you out the door without a requisite doctoral level style obstacle course in the last mile to make sure you knew that you had earned your degree. The self-imposed pressure of it all. To say I was stressed would be a mild understatement. Upon returning to campus that fall, I lost my appetite. I had dropped so much weight by Christmas break that rumors swirled about me being anorexic. It was also the only time in my life I ever suffered an extreme case of writer's block. I had read countless books over the summer and literally had 80 pages of notes for my thesis. I had started 3 separate documents on my PowerBook for the final draft, but nothing was coming together in a meaningful way. To top it off, I had barely written 1 word of my short stories for this project. By early February, the clock was ticking faster and faster as my March jury date loomed. So I was quite the emotional wreck around the time this intimate moment took place with my guy friend. Our undefined, more than friends but not officially dating relationship was an oasis where I felt like myself, because the pressure I was under had turned me into a different, very short-tempered person. But now here he comes, wrecking my mood by terrorizing me with these 4 words. Tell me a story. Only in retrospect did I realize it was his way of trying to help me out of my writing rut, the same way he influenced me to eat. The only time I went to the cafeteria each day was for dinner, because that's when I caught up with my friends. After 2 bites of anything, I felt overwhelmingly full. Boy, I wish I lost my appetite nowadays when I get stressed out. Unfortunately, eating has been my coping mechanism for years. He was the only one who managed to get me to eat a little more. I gotta admit, he was real sneaky about it. He'd come to my room later on in the evening and say he was hungry, then ask me what I had. It was usually ramen noodles or some bread and peanut butter or something like that. He'd make whatever it was, take a few bites, and offer me some. Then I would be the one who finished it up. One day, he finally admitted his master plan. I wasn't really hungry. I just wanted you to eat something. Like I said, our time together had a calming effect on me. Miraculously, my appetite came back on its own in April, once my English thesis was done and my concert was over. By graduation, I had put back on 10 pounds and didn't look gaunt anymore. But I didn't have June 5th, 1995 in my sights, that moment in February when he asked me to tell him a story. I was worried that my inability to write great stories for my thesis was probably going to keep me from walking. And then his monkey wrench. Tell me a story. To me, telling a story was a whole different ballgame than writing one. I didn't consider myself an orator. I wasn't a preacher, I wasn't a comedian, and I wasn't an actor. My work lived on the page, where I had time to labor over each word before showing it to anyone. Storytelling is an oral tradition. In my mind, storytellers are naturally gifted masters of spoken art forms. The disconnect for me was the medium. But actually, I am a storyteller, and so are you. Time and experience have shown me that we all tell stories. We just use different mediums, and we have varied skill levels. Storytellers are not super special people. You and I tell stories to our families and friends every single day. We hook their attention, draw them into the circumstances, and we get an emotional response out of them as a result. That is the essence of storytelling. We are baptized in stories as babies. We are encouraged to use our imaginations as toddlers. We get in trouble if we start telling tall tales once we're school-aged. That's just about the time when we're socialized to begin segmenting our lives into different talent, ability, and skill groups. Those who gravitate towards writing, music, art, dance, cinema, and entertainment, and who choose to pursue it to the degree of an extreme hobbyist or full-time professional, are labeled creative. The rest are quote unquote outsiders and believe the lie that interests and disciplines like mathematics, the sciences, medicine, finance, and more are not quote unquote creative, when in fact they are. Every discipline tells its version of the human story through its own lens. No matter what you do for a living or as a hobby, you, my friend, are a storyteller too. Bringing my inner storyteller to the surface. I realized in 2023 I was still struggling with my identity as a storyteller. Last year, my good friend and business buddy, PR strategist Nina Oglesby, began to challenge me to share more of my story and start getting media attention for my business. That same fight response kicked in as when my guy friend challenged me 28 years earlier. There's a part of me that feels I should be ashamed to say that, but hey, I was always a late bloomer, so taking a long time to come around to an idea, that's on brand for me. I kept saying to her, I am not a storyteller. I don't have a story to tell. My story is boring and not interesting, at least to me. After I said this one too many times for her liking, she went off on me, as only a very good friend can lovingly do when they're calling you out on your mess. Her words hit home, and I had to sit with myself and start looking at myself, my story, and my storytelling abilities differently. I had been relegating myself to one storytelling medium, writing. I was also limiting it to one way of expressing it, fiction. Even worse, I had been beating myself up because I wasn't even storytelling in my chosen medium as much as I could have been. To top it off, I didn't have anything published in my name. My ghostwriting clients don't count. So Could I honestly call myself a writer or a storyteller when I don't have anything published to prove it? More on that erroneous thinking in a future blog post. I had to snap out of it and tell myself it doesn't matter. Even if I didn't have a published book, I had clients whose lives and businesses were being changed because I was able to help them with their book projects. At the end of March 2024, I was contemplating my next batch of short form video content. I was challenging myself and thinking about how I can make a mundane subject like writing more visually interesting. I feel like the internet doesn't stop scrolling for talking head videos anymore unless it's a celebrity or a particular piece of content that went viral because so many people shared it. We may not stop the scroll for much, but if our friend curated a 60-second experience for us in our DMs, we'll watch it. My question to myself was, how can I make my videos something people would want to share? How do I stand out from the other talking head book writing coaches out there? Nina's words to me last year came flooding back to mind. Tell my story. I didn't put up much resistance at that point because I knew it would be my differentiator. The more I open up and share emotional and teachable moments that stand out to me from my seemingly boring working class upbringing story, I know it would be what makes people choose me over the book writing coach next door. Then I challenged myself further. What if I made my videos into a visual story so I could break up the monotony of people staring at my face, cute as it may be? What if, when I'm writing my blog articles, it's not just a list of tips and tricks? Teaching content is cool, but people don't connect with information. They connect with other people. I was beginning to see my blog as an opportunity to level up and create a deeper emotional connection with my audience. I know my stories will stick with you because we remember how we feel 100 times more than we remember facts. Better still, I'll be displaying my writing style every single week. Who needs a book when you're publishing every week? I do, but I'll take the baby steps for now. I was beginning to see everything that I do in my life as a function of storytelling. And then I couldn't unsee it. But I did have one more fear hurdle to overcome. I started to wonder, is there a limit to how many stories about my life I can tell? It may get boring and repetitive after a while. Can I keep this up? It was a ridiculous question because the answers immediately presented themselves. Number one, I'm not limited to telling only stories about my life. I can tell my clients' stories and I can borrow other stories, as long as I don't try to pass it off as my own. The point is, as long as I'm telling stories as much as I can, I'll be making emotional connections. A win is a win. Number two, I'm a writer. I know how to show, not tell. I can take any situation and turn it into a vignette, whether that's for a video, a caption, an audio podcast, or a blog post. And number three, even if I told my story over and over, A, there will always be someone new who never heard it before, and B, my diehard fans wouldn't mind hearing it again. Case in point, I love me some Tabitha Brown. I've lost count how many interviews I've seen her in. I probably know her story as well as she does. But I'd still watch 5 dozen more interviews with her because she's going to say something different every time. I'm going to learn another little facet of her. And even if I don't, it's comforting to see and hear her be consistent. Like rewatching my favorite movie or TV show, I already know what's going to happen. I just want to relive my wonderful experience with it again and again. Problem solved. I'll keep telling as many facets of my story as I can until I can't anymore. Over the last 2 months or so, I've been embracing and displaying my inner storytelling in all my content mediums. The types of responses I've been getting to my content since implementing these changes are night and day. Maybe you've noticed this change. Maybe one of my visually interesting or emotionally vulnerable pieces of content put me on your radar, and now you're here at my blog, where I publish my writing weekly. Welcome. Prepare to be storyfied. And yes, I just made up that word. How you can bring out your inner storyteller too. Now, you might be saying the following to yourself, but Denise Renee, I can't do what you do. I don't have your personality on camera. I don't even know how to edit videos. And I certainly haven't been practicing my writing skills for over 40 years like you have. You're right. You can't do what I do. You're not me. But better than being me, because I'm already taken, is being you. And that's what tapping into your inner storyteller is all about. There's no need to overcomplicate things. Storytelling is as simple as sharing what happened from beginning to end. Life has its own dramas. Your story will naturally have its ups and downs. Drama doesn't need to be manufactured. People just want to know that they can relate to you and that you get them. Your journey starts with asking yourself a simple question. How can I share more stories in everything I do for my business or brand? Here are a few answers. You don't have to turn a simple email into War and Peace, but if you can throw in a quick personal reference, that could be enough to grab attention and evoke a positive emotion. Can you show, don't tell more in your social media captions? Can you pick B-roll clips that can convey your message even if you're not in the frame? Because I didn't consider myself a storyteller for a long time, I can identify with anyone feeling overwhelmed by the tremendous pressure to be this fantastical storytelling marketing machine. Your mission, should you accept it, is to be imbued with magical powers that captivates audiences and can convert that attention into millions in revenue in a single quarter. It's ridiculous, I know, but that pressure is real. I feel like everyone else is doing a way better job at storytelling in their business than I am, and maybe you do too. Storytelling is a marketing buzzword that has been increasing in fervor over the last 10 years or so in business communities. There's enough to worry about already. Adding one more thing to the proverbial plate that feels foreign and awkward is enough to make you want to pause the ride and get off. I get it. I hope that by sharing my journey to embracing my inner storyteller, you feel better about yourself. Because if a writer doesn't feel like a storyteller, who does? But that was the old me. I'm definitely in my storyteller era now. All it took was a kick in the rear end from a friend and a mindset shift. If you're this far down in this post, you and I are now friends. Hopefully, I've given you a few helpful prompts to kickstart your storyteller era too, with a few simple ways you can sprinkle more stories into your content and communications. It doesn't have to be complicated, and it doesn't always have to be your story. Just remember, the purpose of stories is to connect with the human on the other side of the device screen. If you're writing a book, making an emotional connection with your reader is critical. Whatever the subject matter or book style you're writing, there's no reason for it to be a bland regurgitation of facts and figures. So in this week's video, here are my tips and suggestions for how to incorporate more storytelling into the book you're writing with the intent of growing your business. Why storytelling is critical to growing your business or brand today. I remember when TiVo first came out, and then the cable companies quickly caught up with their version of DVRs in the early 2000s. I'd record my shows and play them back at my leisure, skipping the commercials. But for the shows I loved, I had a different trick for them. I was addicted to watching 24, starring Kiefer Sutherland, live every week. It was Jack Bauer and Chloe for me. But I wouldn't start watching at 8 p.m. I'd go get my snacks and chill through the first two sets of commercials. Then I'd start watching at 8:24 because that was enough time for me to fast forward through the commercials and be caught up to the last segment in real time. We've certainly come a long way in our ability to ignore advertising messages in the last 24 years. Like what I did there? As consumers, we are no longer easily moved by persuasive copy and celebrity endorsements. Anything that doesn't seem authentic or is too salesy, we're already swiping away after 1 second. But well-told stories stop the scroll. Relatability makes us relax our guard. Storytelling in business is all about being relatable and making a human connection. If a consumer or a buyer does not feel a connection to the brand, and an authentic one at that, that brand is not going to survive for long. Here are 4 quick reasons why storytelling is critical in business today. Number 1, stories contextualize messaging. Number 2, stories humanize your business. Number 3, stories give people a way to advocate for you by contextualizing who you are and what you do so others can understand and relate to your business. And number 4, stories simplify your message. It can say what a tagline or brand message can't. Often, business owners struggle with what to say about their business. A story can say it all and say it more effectively. Did you like those 4 points? I can't take credit for it. This display of brilliance is a contribution from my good friend and PR strategist, Nina Oglesby. Connect with her on Instagram and LinkedIn. Resources. All in all, I hope this blog post and video encourage you to begin to see your business and book from the standpoint of what story you're telling. If you want to dive deeper into how to incorporate storytelling into your branding and marketing, check out some of the resources I have listed for you below. These books are focused on helping you tell the right stories in your business. Find them on your favorite book retailer's website or audiobook platform. Where available, I've provided a link to a video summary of each title. And let me know in the comments or through a social media DM. What do you think of how I've been using more storytelling to make my blog and video content more engaging? Thank you for listening. If you enjoy my work and want to support, feel free to send me a tip. Visit paypal.me/meet Denise Renee or scroll to the bottom of this post and click on the image of the tip jar. Tipping is not required, but it is appreciated. See you in the next post. All right, so now for context number 2, I kind of continued that story in the next blog post, which right now it's my most recent post on my website. It's called My 3-Step Writing Process. And you can find this blog post at writingwithdeniserenee.com/3-step-writing-process. That's writingwithdeniserenee.com/3, the little dash, step, little dash, writing. Wait, did I say forward slash? Oh, God. I know slashes and dashes. Ciao. Okay. writingwithdeniserenee.com/, right? The little forward looking thing. 3, the number 3, the little dash, looks like a little minus sign. Step, the little dash, writing, little dash, process. Okay? All right. And here is that blog read to you. Ditching 80 pages of unorganized notes, I wrote the senior thesis for my English degree from beginning to end in about 3 days. The result? I got an A- and graduated on time. 29 years later, I'm still mad at myself about that. Had I given myself 2 extra days for editing, I believe I might have earned an A+. Am I delusional? Yes, just a little bit. Because let's address the elephant in the room. Who in the world writes their senior thesis in 3 days and gets an A anything? A senior thesis is a semester-long or year-long project. How in the world did I pull that off? Was it because I'm a brilliant writer? Definitely not. I'm a talented writer, but I wouldn't say I'm brilliant. In full transparency, certain factors allowed me to accomplish this Herculean feat without an outline. Because remember, I ditched my notes. Let me tell you what happened, and then I'll unpack those factors. I hope you'll learn from my experience what you need to slay whatever writing dragon is currently challenging you. The 3 factors that helped me write quickly and earned accolades. Here's how I could ditch my notes and write my thesis in one pass from top to bottom and earn an A-. Although I'm about to give these factors numbers, they aren't necessarily in order of importance. I needed all of them to produce a great piece of writing which resembled a book manuscript. Factor 1, I knew my subject backwards and forward. Factor number 2, I had a crystal clear schedule. Factor number 3, I had a deeply ingrained writing process. Let's dig into them one by one. Factor number 1, I knew my subject backward and forward. In my last blog post, I shared how dramatic my senior year of college at an elite New England school was. By the time I chose to lock myself in my room for several days, I had been living with this project for about a year. I came up with the idea for my honors English thesis early in my junior year. I didn't think my idea of blending a scholarly examination of Caribbean American experience in Paul Marshall's work with my own collection of short stories as a foray into the canon would be accepted. To pull the project off, I needed 2 different advisors. The first was my absolute favorite, Robert Farnsworth, and yes, Bates actively encouraged us to ditch formalities and call our professors by their first name. So, Rob, as I always called him, was from the English department, and I needed him for the creative writing portion. My other requested advisor was Timothy Chin from the rhetoric department. I needed his specialty in Caribbean literature and lived experience, as he is a Jamaican born Chinese person raised in the United States, so he could advise me on the critical analysis portion. To my shock, the honors thesis review board accepted my pitch. When I found out, I was elated for about 2 seconds. In the third second, panic set in. I was instantly stressed out. I remained so until I quit the honors program 3 weeks before I was due to submit my project. Between those two time markers, I read like a maniac throughout the end of my junior year. I read Caribbean themed short story collections and novels. When I got back home to New York City for the summer, I scoured the Strand and the block long Barnes and Nobles on 6th Avenue between 21st and 22nd Street, which sadly closed in 2008, for any type of scholarly analysis I could get my hands on about Caribbean people's experiences in the States. 80 pages of unorganized notes quickly piled up. I started writing the critical portion 3 times that fall, but abandoned all versions. I had ideas for my short stories and created a few drafts, but didn't make much progress. Writing short stories was the fun part of the project. I knew I could whip those out anytime I wanted. The critical analysis portion took up all of my brain power. I was worried about it because I didn't have Tim Chin. He had taken a position at another school, effectively abandoning me. I replaced him with Charles Nero from the rhetoric department. That was an unsettling choice. First, Charles didn't have a handle on the subject the way Tim Chin did. However, as one of the few black professors on campus with expertise in African American studies, he was the most suitable replacement. Secondly, the last class I took with him didn't go well. In my mind, I had to redeem myself in his eyes. 3 weeks before the honors thesis deadline, I was far from ready. I knew I didn't have enough time to produce the project I pitched, so I had to let my dream die. I dropped the honors designation, but still had a thesis to write. It automatically became a semester-long project rather than a year-long one. I didn't have to face a jury or write a short story collection. However, I still needed to turn in the critical analysis. I had little time to complete it because the semester-long theses were due right after the honors ones were due. That's when I ditched all of my notes and previous drafts. The fresh document on my Macintosh PowerBook 145B glared at me with its winking cursor. I glared back and instantly started typing, filling it up with a fury. I wrote from beginning to end in 3 days. After living with the information for more than a year, words tumbled freely from my fingers. I always possessed the ability to write this piece in my sleep. The problem was when I was awake. I had let stress block me from thinking or writing clearly. Ultimately, the time crunch proved to be a bigger bully than stress. It silenced the chatter in my head and chased the words right out of my soul. They landed on the page as a perfectly outlined, coherent thought. The big takeaway is writing is easier when you know your subject matter well. If it's something you can talk about for hours, even better. Too bad I had to put myself under extreme stress to figure that out. But hey, now you get to benefit from my crazy experience. You'll write faster when you choose a subject you know like the back of your hand. Factor number 2, I had a crystal clear schedule. The only way I could pull off the task was to clear my schedule. I needed to write without interruptions. Even though I had a full credit load, I barely had to grace the confines of a classroom that semester. I was taking my last music requirement, a squishy appreciation class I only needed to attend once a week. My 2 theses projects for both English and music carried credit, but my time was my own. The only other thing that took up my time was working as a receptionist and concierge for concerts at Olin Arts Center. I cleared my schedule by giving away all my shifts for several days following my only classroom obligation that week. I would be broke, but my thesis would be done. Then I locked myself away in my room and wrote for 3 days straight. I lived on ramen noodles and waffles with peanut butter. On day 4, I took a break to get some air. I went to Commons, where the dining room was. I hung out with friends and played some pool. The next morning, I gave my writing an editorial once-over, then strolled across the quad into the computer lab at Pettigrew Hall. I printed out and bound my project, then marched it upstairs to Rob's office. He wasn't there, so I plopped it in his inbox with a meh sentiment. I was emotionally and physically spent. I made a beeline back to my room at the Bill to get some well-earned sleep. The big takeaway is that having time to write distraction-free yields amazing results and productivity. To a degree, life was simple in college. It didn't have the pressures of adulting. I'm sure you can agree that getting a responsibility-free day is a rare luxury as an adult. I don't know about you, but whenever I get that opportunity, I only want to sleep or vegetate on the couch with my favorite foods and movies. But even though life is more complicated as adults, the beauty is we still have control over our schedules. If you intend to write a book, consistently making time to write is imperative. Do you have to clear the table like I did? No. Work with the time you have. Can you only commit to 30 minutes a day? It's better than no commitment. If you are consistent, you can still accomplish the same result I did, a finished project. Of course, the more time you can dedicate, for instance, 72 obligation-free hours, the faster you'll finish. Factor number 3, I had a deeply ingrained writing process. I was always a star student in my high school English classes. During my first year of college, I breezed through the 100-level English classes. But in the first semester of my sophomore year, I had my ass handed to me by Ann Thompson, the head of the English department. She gave me the first C's and B's in English I ever had in life. Like two strong-willed female rams, we locked horns. But in the end, I sat my precocious tail down in her office, listened to her critique, and improved. She was so instrumental in teaching me how to become a beast at crafting persuasive and comparative literary essays. My last 2 papers in her class that semester were A's. I redeemed my dignity and earned her respect. What I learned that year helped turn into a godsend in my junior year. My intense course load in 93 and 94 had me writing papers weekly for my English and music classes. Without realizing it, I seamlessly went from having a natural talent and love for writing to having a well-oiled process for cranking out papers and short stories on demand. I had formed and internalized my writing process. I had practiced it so much it became ingrained. Stumbling or stuttering over my thoughts was a thing of the past. I rarely needed to create an outline for shorter papers because I got used to thinking through my points in my head first. When I sat down to write, I skipped the outlining phase on paper and went straight into writing my first draft from beginning to end. I never worried about what grade I would get because it was always a B or an A. Although my writing process matured over time, it is still ingrained. At any moment, I can begin writing on almost any topic. Writer's block is not an issue for me unless I'm emotionally stressing out about something. This has come with time and experience, not because I'm the most brilliant writer there ever was. The big takeaway here is that writing is a skill, and a learnable one at that. As with anything, the more you practice writing, the better you get at it. I logged my 10,000 hours of mastery into a compressed 2.5-year time frame. When you have little practice communicating your ideas in writing, the process is longer and more frustrating. The only way to shortcut the process is to use templates and formulas or to adopt someone else's process that resonates with you. That last option is what the rest of this article and today's featured video will help you do. My 3-step writing process. The following video lays out a simplified version of my current writing process. This framework is versatile. It can be applied to creating content of all types, such as YouTube scripts, podcast scripts, courses, digital products, blogs, and more. If you've been trying to write your book, but the process has been frustrating, try my 3-step writing process and see if it suits you. Anyone can learn to write quickly and effectively. My hope in sharing my academic story, that only my fellow nerds would love, is to show you how I learned my process for writing. I wasn't born with it. If I learned it, you can too. Many people who are interested in writing a book talk themselves out of it because they're afraid it will take too long. In response, I see many book writing coaches promoting programs that focus on helping you write quickly. I'm not mad at the reasoning behind this tactic. If you can help someone overcome their perception of quote unquote a long time and get them to finish their book quickly, they will finally accomplish their dream of being an author. The thing is, I don't think it's a time problem. I believe it's a process problem. Ultimately, what these coaches offer is a way to condense time by giving you their process to follow. Since I have not experienced every single program out there that takes this approach, I won't make any blanket statements about them. What I can say is that my approach as a writing coach is the unsexy one. I don't promise a particular time frame when you'll finish your book because so many factors can influence that which are outside of my control. What I do promise is a process for getting the work done. A process cosplays in overalls. It's a big signal that work is required, but I promise to make the work easier and more doable than if you were trying to do it alone. If you are finally ready to write your book with the right process in place, I have some resources linked below that can help. Email me or DM me on LinkedIn to let me know how your process is going and if I can help you further. All right, y'all. So thank you so much for hanging with me in this episode. I hope that it gives you some context. The thing that I really wanted you to be listening to was just what my experiences were in college and that mindset, so that when I read you the next pieces that I will read you, you'll have a context of where I was at that time as a young 20-year-old lass. Child, if I can't laugh at myself, I don't know what I can do. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this lazy episode. And I will see you guys next Sunday by God's grace on time, because I'm gonna record the next 2 or 3 episodes. The next 2 or 3 episodes will be on time because I'm gonna record them very, very soon this week. So we're gonna be ahead of ourselves on this piece of content. So I thank you guys for hanging with me. There's more to come on this Unpublished, and of course, we'll be during the week. Monday through Friday, my goal is to post like my regular teaching content about books and writing and stuff like that. And then on the weekends, we do the fun stuff. We do the Sell Your Book podcast on Saturdays, and on Sundays, the Unpublished. So that's my content schedule. And we gonna get there. We're gonna fill it up. We're gonna fill it up. But right now, I be working 70 hours a week. So be patient with me. All right, y'all. See you in the next episode. Bye.